silence wind and waves at the mention of your name. And you're here, and you're the provider. All I ever needed, and Jesus, you supply. And you're here with wonder-working power, and everything you breathe on, it's coming back to life. At the mention of your name, every chain will break. I know everything will change. Jesus, just the whisper of your name will silence wind and waves at the mention of your name. And you're here, and you're the provider. All I ever needed, and Jesus, you supply. And you're here with wonder-working power, and everything you breathe on, it's coming back to life. At the mention of your name, every chain will break. I know everything will change. Jesus, just a whisper of your name will silence wind and waves at the mention of your name. At the mention of your name, oh, every chain will break. I know everything will change. Jesus, just a whisper of your name will silence wind and waves at the mention of your name. You are my strength, you are my anchor, and you never fail. You are my hope, you will deliver. Emmanuel, you are my strength, you are my anchor, and you never fail. You are my hope, you will deliver. At the mention of your name, every chain will break. I know everything will change. Jesus, just the whisper of your name will silence wind and waves at the mention of your name. At the mention of your name, every chain will break. I know everything will change. Jesus, silence, wind and waves at the mention of your name.
When Neil had talked to me a couple of weeks ago about maybe covering a service for him, I chose this week. But then as I started thinking about it even more, he had mentioned earlier that we should try to go to some other churches, visit some other churches, think about it, do those things. And that got me thinking about one of the churches that I recently, and I thought it was recently, but it hasn't really been that recent. I went and visited Impact in Murfreesboro. And if I'm not mistaken, there's a ton of you in here right now. Will y'all raise your hand? Yeah. Just all those that are here from Impact? Yeah. Thanks for coming. I did want to talk about a little bit about Billy Graham. Wes had mentioned that. And, man, how many people lives did he touch? I heard something like 127 million or something like that he had, given the gospel to. And I'm not saying just spoke in front of, but actually gave the gospel. So that's amazing. What a legacy. Sometimes that makes us kind of feel shrunk in what we're doing. But, he was given opportunities and he took advantage of them. And I think we just got to figure out what our opportunities are and take advantage of those. When we're given a chance to speak, maybe speak. If we're at a gas station and the Lord presses upon our heart to talk to someone or say hello or smile, those are the things. We're being just in the service of the Lord, just like Billy Graham was in front of 1 million people, if we're doing the small things. So I just wanted to pass that on. Sometimes we get, man, what a legacy. I'll never be able to live up to that. Well, that wasn't our calling. Our calling may be to be friendly, to be kind to the person who needed it. So just think about that as you go on. And I think about that also. I pray for Will and Kylie every Thursday morning. Those of you that come to church on Wednesday night know why. Because evidently there's a class that they go to on Thursday that is really challenging to their belief. They get challenged on their belief. And so I wanted to just say, hey, we don't agree on a lot of things, but I've got your back when it comes to stuff like that because I know you're out there. You're standing for something that we all in here believe in, and it's tough out there. And so I know I give Will a hard time a lot because I even woke up the other night. I told him this last week. I woke up from a dream that I was harassing him so much at church that I was apologizing to him in my sleep. And then I woke up thinking, I've got to apologize to Will, and I hadn't even said anything to him. So you're not living right when you're giving him a hard time in your dreams. So I'll just say I'm sorry once again. But that brings me to, as an older guy now, midlife, whatever you want to call it, and, you see this country doing things that I may not agree with, and we're doing things as, sometimes you think it's going to hell in a handbasket. But then I see Will, I see Kylie, Tanner, and his wife, the name I'm looking, Chelsea. Jeez. I wanted to call you friend, and I knew that wasn't your name. And so I know that the youth, we have a future. And part of that future is the next girl that's coming up. I texted her when I was thinking about visiting other churches and thinking about giving my testimony and things of that nature. I was thinking, I text Meg Hill and said, Meg, would you be willing to come and give your testimony at our church? And her response back was beautiful. She's like, every part of my being wants to say no. But I know it's for the glory of God, so I'll say yes. And man, what an answer. That's exactly what we wanted. So just a little brief She graduated from Harding University out in Arkansas. She's been on several mission trips, so she understands what it's like to sleep in a hammock and fight gnats and all the kind of stuff that you did. She worked for Fawn and myself for a year and a half, ran our shop. She worked for Neil and Sherry with the ice cream place. She told me her testimony. I thought it was a year ago, but me being old and senile, she said it was more like 2 years ago. And it touched me. It made me have faith in the young people that we've got with us now. And so I know it'll bless you. So Meg, would you come on up?
Thanks, good. All right, guys, I'm just going to pray before we start, all right? Father, we just give you the glory for the breath in our lungs, for the life that you've put within us, for all the plans that are good that you have for us. And I thank you for opportunities like this to step out in faith and to see you do things far greater than we can ask or imagine. I thank you for your Holy Spirit that knows every single heart in this room, God. And I thank you that it's your Spirit that speaks through me and not myself, because it's your Spirit that knows the hearts in this room. And it's your Spirit that knows what needs to be spoken and what needs to be said. And I just ask for open hearts and good soil, and that things be received, Father, because this is from you, and it's for your glory, and it's for change in lives, and it's for blessing and benefit and all the good things that you have planned for these people. And I thank you for them. I thank you for their ears. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys, this is the first time I've ever had a microphone in my hands. real life. It is true. I had gone over to Dunbros 2 years ago. I'll just start back from the beginning. I grew up in church, conservative, small, very religious, no spirit, empty and dead for the most part. And even from a young age, I knew there was more. I knew there was more. And I would read the word occasionally, not consistently, but I would read it when I got old enough to read. And I would read the things of Jesus, and I would read the way he was, and the things he said and the things he did. And I would watch the adults around me, and I was like, what is wrong? Something is off. Something is bad off with this. This is not, and I felt, honestly, on the inside, I felt more mature than the adults around me. So I grew up with just a lot of confusion, and, their lifestyles would influence me, and I kind of grew up with this, distance thing with God, and he was just kind of a dream and not a reality. And back in 2015 is whenever I started going to Impact Church in Murfreesboro, and that place is so full of faith and love, and they encourage you, get to know God one-on-one. You're not going to go anywhere if you don't have a relationship with God one-on-one. And it's so important. It's so important to spend that time with him, because that's where you're going to gain the strength, your intimacy, your one-on-one time with him, to go out and do the things that he's asking you to do. Yeah. And so I started going to church out there. And then in the beginning of 2016, it had been almost a year that I had started seeking God on my own. And I developed this relationship with him on my own. And I had gone out to pray one night in my car, and God said, you prostitute your heart. You give your heart to anything else fully that you want except for me. And that just kind of wrecked me in that moment. And then right after that, he said, you're going to go spend 33 days in the woods. And I was like, that's ridiculous. I cannot be hearing this correctly. And so I kind of laughed it off immediately. But I prayed and I said, if this is real, if this is something you really want me to do, as absurd as it sounds, I'll go do it, but I'm going to need more than one word. You're going to have to confirm it multiple times because I'm not just going to go hike out into the woods. So I'm just going to scoot this back and do a little pacing. So it's crazy what God will do when you're expectant, right? When you have an expectant heart. So I went the next couple of weeks and I was expecting because I believed that the word he had given me was true. And, when God speaks to you, that's an unmovable thing. When you know that you know that you know, you can't be swayed from it. And that's what had happened. But I still wanted his confirmations. So I went the next couple of weeks very expectant. And I was like looking for his confirmations. I was searching for him, and whatever you look for, you're going to find. And I got them multiple ways, multiple times. He spoke through multiple people. He spoke through my Spotify Discover playlist. I don't know if you guys know anything about that, but Spotify will give you a playlist every week based on what you listen to, prophetic songs on my list that week. It was crazy. So, I try to overdo things sometimes. I try to go above and beyond what's really expected. Kevin can probably attest to that, hopefully. And so when God gave me this word, 33 days in the woods, I was like, okay, so this is kind of biblical in some aspects, going out into the wilderness. You probably want me to fast the whole time, too. This is what's going on in my head. Ridiculous. And so I'm making all these plans. I'm not taking my car. I'm not taking my phone. I'm not taking any food. I'm just going all in. Don't do that, guys. Don't take God's words into your own hands. Whew. Thank God I have a really good friend who's prayerful and who stopped all of that from happening. But the word was simple, 33 days in the woods. And so in May of 2016, I went out to, what is it even called? It's in Sparta. It's a state natural area, Virgin Falls. I don't know if you guys have ever been out there. It's very primitive. It's kind of like you park and you hike all your stuff in. It's a 4.5 mile trail one way. Not a lot of people go out there. And I chose that place because I knew it was going to be quiet and it was going to be away. It's about 2.5 hours from Nashville. And I was more terrified. It was a month and a half from the time that I heard him say go to the woods till I actually went. And that whole month and a half, I was just as anxious as a person can be. I was so scared. Mostly just because I didn't know what to expect. But then I went out there. It was, honestly, guys, in the flesh, it was terrible. It was terrible. Thank you, Elijah, for that word, wherever you are before. Man, walking with God is not easy. It's a high call. And it will put all of your flesh to death quickly. So I go out there, right? But God is so abundant in his love because in every area that I was unprepared, he was over-prepared. And in every area that I was not confident, he was so confident and he was ready to give me more than I needed, really. I had a spot. There's not a lot of campsites out there, but I had a specific spot in my head for that whole month and a half, and I was like, that's where I'm pitching my tent, and I'm going to stay there the entire time, and no one can stop me. And so I get out there, and lo and behold, there's this guy and his dad in my spot. They're the only ones camping on the whole trail. I was like, you've got to be kidding me, God. And so I go out there. These guys actually ended up being a huge blessing to me during the time. But so I go out there the very first night. I'm terrified. I'm trembling. I have 3 journals worth of notes from the 33 days that I was out there. And on the first night, my handwriting in that journal is hardly legible because I was trembling so badly from just fear. There was just a lot of fear in me. So I'm in this there's a cave on the trail. It's like this huge cave. It's got a waterfall coming down over the top. I was like, okay, my spot's taken. I'll camp in this cave tonight. And so these two guys, the son and the dad, they come down into the cave. They see me, this young girl, camping alone. And Mike was the name of the younger one. He's about my age, 26 or so. And he asked me, what are you doing out here alone? And I was just straight up with him. I said, listen, you're probably going to think I'm crazy. God told me to come to the woods for 33 days, so here I am. And so he sits with me, and he was like, that's crazy that you say that because I believe in God, but I don't really like the church, and I don't really do that kind of stuff. But if I could say one place that I know God confidently, it's when I'm in the woods. And he was like, so just from you speaking that to me, I have a lot of respect for you. And so he built me a fire. And it's crazy how both God and the enemy can use people. Because he's building me a fire, and as he's building me a fire, he's like, hey, also, what weapons did you bring with you? Because there's bears and mountain lions and copperheads and all this stuff out here. And that's just like Satan to bring up all of the things that could possibly harm you, or to bring up all the doubt, or to bring up all the fear. I'm not a violent person. I'm not going to carry a gun with me. That's not who I am. But then I'm sitting there thinking, and this fear is just washing over me. And it's starting to drown me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing out here? This guy knows the woods, and he's well equipped in the woods, and he's got his knives and stuff ready. And so that was the start. That was only the beginning. But from that first night, ironically, I did take food, but I only took 1 Cliff Bar per day, which is not sufficient. But from that first night, because of the respect and the favor that God had given me with these guys, they were actually homeless, living out in the woods. And they had a lot of food with them. And they told me from that very first night, if you're hungry, come eat with us. And so I took them up on it because I was hungry. A lot of really powerful things happened while I was out there. I learned a lot of lessons. And truthfully, I was hoping that God was going to remove the fear that I felt while I was there. That's what I was praying for, and that's what I was asking for and hoping for. He didn't remove the fear, but by the Spirit of God, he gave me the encouragement and the grace and the confidence and the endurance and the perseverance to stay out the time. The fear was still there. And I don't want you guys to hear this and think, well, that's a cool story of what God did for you. But truthfully, God's not going to call many of you guys to go spend a month in the woods, okay? It's just not probably going to happen. But he is going to call you to other things. He's going to call you to other challenges that are beyond yourself. He's going to call you to uncomfortable places. He's going to call you to giants and to mountains and to valleys. And you're going to have to trust him enough in those times to go through it. Because the truth is, guys, if I didn't stay out there for the whole time that he told me to, I would have missed out. I would have missed out on all the lessons And I would have missed out on all the growth within myself. And I would have missed out on just like the overwhelming feeling of his love for me. Because he loved me so well. He provided so well. At this area, you're technically only allowed to stay for 2 consecutive weeks. They can make you leave after that. So these guys that I met, they were only going to be there for 2 weeks. They actually ended up staying the entire time, and they fed me the entire time. Now, you can say that's coincidental, but I say that's the hand of God blessing me and sustaining me, because I wouldn't have been able to maintain without them being there. And also being with them was a huge blessing and a huge challenge, because, right, it's this provision of God constantly. But at the same time, they didn't know God. They weren't close to God. And the things coming out of their mouths constantly were negative and full of death and full of cursing and full of just vile things. So they would be speaking all these things that were stirring up fear and doubt and making me feel sometimes kind of crazy, for doing what I was doing. But it was such an opportunity to go back to my tent alone with my God and speak his words that I had heard over myself and remind myself. And it taught me to do that. Like, their negativity taught me to go and be overly secure and positive with God. And it was, in the moments, it's going to suck. In the moments, you're going to be like, this is the worst thing that has ever happened. And when you're through it and you're on the other side of it, you're going to be like, that was the best thing that's ever happened. So, yeah, I encourage you to look for, there's going to be blessing and challenge mixed in together. They're going to be mixed in, and you may not see it till you're past, but they're there. A lot of really cool things happened. On actually the 3rd day that I was out there, it was a 2.5 mile hike from where I was camped to the parking lot, where I had to charge my phone to keep in contact to make sure to tell people I was still alive. Okay. So on the 3rd day, I'm hiking to my car, and I'm praying the entire way because I'm terrified, and I'm convinced now in my mind, not in the spirit, but I'm convinced in my mind that ultimately a bear is going to attack me and I'm going to die. So every time I go hiking back to the car, I'm praying nonstop. And on this particular day, as I'm praying, God's reminding me, I'm protecting you from everything that's out here. And he said, I'm also protecting Mike, which was the guy that was feeding me, because he's looking out for you. And so I get to my car, I'm charging my phone. Mike is convinced that he knows every single thing there is to know about the woods. There's a lot of pride there. He is a nature man, and he wants everybody to know. But he's also convinced that there's actually no rattlesnakes in Tennessee because he's never seen one. And so on this day, Mike also had to hike back to the parking lot to get something out of his car. So he hiked up about an hour behind me, and he gets to the parking lot, and he's just like freaking out. And I was like, what's the deal? He was like, you're never going to believe what happened. I was hiking up the trail, and a rattlesnake came out and struck my walking stick. And he was like, I pinned it down and I killed it. And I was like, that's my God, because 1, you're prideful and you don't believe there's rattlesnakes out here. And 2, he just confirmed his word to me by protecting you from it when you could have died in 7 minutes. Apparently, that's what they say. I don't know. Okay, and then the metaphor on top of all of that, we took it back to the campsite that night and cut that sucker up and ate it. So that was a cool story. on my 9th night out there, this Mike was paranoid that they were gonna make him leave the woods or something, so he wanted to hide out like off the trail. And I was like, that's fine, you guys go. And so my 9th night was the first night that I actually camped in a place entirely by myself. And so I go to sleep and wake up at about 12:30 or 1 in the morning, and there's like, I didn't look. I say it was a bear. I'm not sure. I didn't look. I was too scared to look. But something very large was just breaking limbs left and right as it walked around. So I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting up, and I turn my light on, and I'm just like praying for protection, right? I'm praying for God's protection. It finally leaves. I go to sleep. A couple days later, I contact home, and my friend tells me, this girl from our church in Murfreesboro, who I didn't even know at the time, I wasn't friends with her, I didn't know her. God had woken her up at the exact same time on the exact same night that I'd heard the bear, and had her praying not for my protection, but for freedom from fear. That was powerful to me, because that confirmed that not only was he 100% looking out for me, but if anything was going to like throw this whole thing off that he was doing, it was going to be my fear, and not because he slacked, you know? So that was a powerful moment. So we had a guest speaker at our church this morning, and he was talking about, how Abraham had this promise from God, right? He was going to make him the father of many nations, but God didn't stop there. He took him outside at night, and he said, look up at the sky, Abraham, and count the stars, and that's going to be your seed. And then he takes him to the beach, and he says, look at the sand. That's going to be your seed, right? He gives him natural reminders. That was a really powerful word, because God's given me a lot of natural reminders, and he did so while I was out there. But you got to know that Abraham, anytime Satan was trying to make him doubt that promise, all he had to do was go outside and look at the sky and remember what God said. Yeah. And anytime Satan was making him doubt, all he had to do was go to a beach and look at the sand and remember what God said. And so, this may be random, I don't know, but while I was out there, I noticed that one day I just noticed this plane flying over the area, and I felt God speak to me that the sound of the plane is the promise of your deliverance. And I kid you not, guys, some days 8 or 9 planes would fly over that place, and I don't even think there's an airport nearby. There's nothing out there. It's just woods. But yeah, natural reminders of his goodness, natural reminders of what's to come. It's a powerful thing, because we're flesh and blood. We're human. Also, important reminder, whenever God calls you to something beyond yourself, it's likely that Satan's going to assemble all of his forces against you in multiple ways. A lot of hell kind of broke loose while I was gone with my friends. my family was not happy with me at all. I couldn't tell my parents because they're very conservative. To say that I heard something from God would make them kind of question me and my sanity. And so I couldn't really tell them. So I wrote them a letter and sent it the day that I left. So they got it while I was out there for about 4 days. Had a lot of really hateful text messages from my siblings. A lot of really worried, concerned text messages from my mom. Satan's really tricky, and he's going to try to divert you from whatever it is that God's called you to. But guys, truthfully, there is just this unbelievable one verse that's always been powerful to me since I've finished, completed this task. Paul says, Christ in you, the hope of glory. And just saying yes to God, just saying yes to that call, even if it was ridiculous, and some people would say that it was. But just saying yes and being obedient and saying, I don't know what you're trying to work in me, and I don't know what you're wanting to produce, but I'm going to let you do it.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah.
That fills you with Christ's likeness, right? To share in his sufferings. Even in the natural, if you go through something traumatic or painful or difficult with other people, you're more deeply connected to them, right? Whenever bad things happen to our country, people bind together. It's the same thing when you're willing to go and share in suffering with Christ, even if you don't understand what it's for or what it means. It connects you to him so deeply, and his character forms in you, and his likeness forms in you. And I tell you the truth, there is nothing more hopeful than seeing Christ in yourself. There is nothing more powerful. And it's so much humility, but it's confidence at the same time. And it's just unbelievable, truthfully. It's unbelievable. And that's the God who loves each of you. That's the God who pursues everyone in this room in a very specific way for each of you. And he doesn't relent. He doesn't stop until he has you. Because if he's begun a good work, he doesn't stop until it's complete. So I encourage you to say yes, always, no matter what, say yes, because it's going to produce life in you if you go through it. Don't try to go around. Do not try to go around the mess. It's frustrating. Because 1, you're still going to get messy, and 2, you're not going to gain the goodness that God has for you on the other side. There's a trail that I run near my house, and God likes to speak to me while I'm on this trail often. But ironically, months before he even told me to go to the woods, I was on this trail, and it's a very narrow footpath, and it's very frustrating because it's not even wide enough really for both of your feet to be side by side on. But a couple months before I heard to go to the woods, he was talking to me while I was running this trail, and he said, stay on the trail. Don't get off of it. Even if it's muddy or messy or slippery, don't get off of it, because you've been a quitter. You've been a quitter, and you've quit things when they've gotten difficult, but you're not going to do that anymore. You're going to go through. Then the woods happened, and I went through. And that word from that trail, from that run, was actually always resonating, always in my head. And I would have to tell myself, God told you, Meg Hill, that you are not going to quit anymore. So you have to stay out here. Then a couple of weeks ago, I was running that trail again after it had rained for like 17 consecutive days. And it's already by a creek, so it was just a mess. And it literally was a mess. The water and the mud was like up to my ankles. My shoes were completely just drenched in mud. And God was speaking to me about childlikeness. And I think that that's what he's wanting to produce. I know for sure in me, probably in lots of people. But you know, a kid isn't going to see a mud puddle and avoid it. They want to get in it. They want to get as messy as they can possibly get. And they find joy in it. And that's what God was saying. He was saying, I want you to be a person who can dance through the mud. Because to try to avoid the messes in life, and we'll do that because we don't like pain and we don't like trial and we don't like suffering. Our flesh hates all of that. But how can Satan defeat someone who will dance through the mud? You know? He can't. He has nothing. If he's going to throw his best at you and you're going to dance through it with a smile on your face and joy in your heart, man, that's what God wants us to be. And so whatever he's got you in right now, whatever season it is, whatever trial, whatever temptation, not God doesn't have you in temptation, I take that back. Whatever test, hold on to what he's spoken to you and do not let it go. And let it be your strength, because he speaks to encourage us and he speaks to strengthen us. And he speaks so that when we're tempted to quit, we don't. We hold on. And know that it says that Christ endured the cross for the hope of the glory that was set before him. Yeah. There is glory set before you at the end of whatever you're going through. There is. He's not going to just put you through a hard time for fun. It's not for fun. I heard a really good sermon. I can't even remember the lady that gave it. But she was talking about God, the purpose of all the hard things, right? It's a shaping. God wants to shape us. Because the end game is we're in eternity with him, equally yoked with Christ as his bride. Equally yoked. We have his character. We have his likeness. We have his countenance. We're his image, right? That's the end game. And if even Christ had to learn obedience through what he suffered, how much more are we going to have to learn obedience through what we suffer? But it's for purpose. And it's because he has better for us, and he has better through us, and he has better from us. He has better for the people around us. And he wants us to be like him. Because he knows there's no better way to be. You know? There's no greater thing. All day today, he's just put a verse on my heart. I believe it's from Thessalonians, maybe 2 Thessalonians. I didn't even look it up. But it says, the one who called you is faithful, and he will do it. And I believe really what he wanted me to say to you guys is don't quit. Don't quit. There's no gain in quitting. And life gets hard, but he's got good things at the end. He's got good things, and not just in eternity. I mean, like the end of each individual trial, he's got good things here in this life, on this world. So I just bless you guys, and I honor you as a church. I thank you for allowing me to come speak and for giving me your attention and your ears. And I pray that you're blessed or maybe challenged, or that whatever your heart needed to hear, that it got. And I ask that you take hold and that you take something away and let it glorify God through you.
Thank you. Testing. You guys like that? Yeah, I did too. Second time around's even better. Thank you, Meg. I know that wasn't easy, but I thank you. It was good. I learned a lot from it. And we're kind of hitting on some of the things that Elijah touched on, some of the things Neil talked about, and then lastly, one of the things that I was going to bring, and I won't be long. I'll do a third of what I talked about, one or two. But I shared a couple of weeks ago, maybe even several months ago, with Todd about how I had a mentor of mine get back in touch with me. Out of the blue. It was a guy I worked with that gave me my first promotion. He was a guy that when I called him a couple of weeks ago saying we keep losing a lot of people and I just can't seem to get it straight, and he just said, sounds to me like you're going to have to work some hours. You know, he just showed me tough love. I found out today that he passed away on Thursday. But I look at it as a way that I got to tell him, number one, that I loved him and I appreciated him. But I started sharing the gospel with him because I knew that he was an unbeliever. And Todd kind of steered me that way because I was wanting to ask him some questions and things of that nature. And he said, don't preach to him. Just share with him. Share what's happening in your life. Share what God's doing with you right now. And then God will take care of the rest. So, you know, we don't know, you know, what happened there. But my thought process to everyone here is we all have opportunities each and every day to share our story. Whether that is verbally or in action, kindness to someone who may not deserve it in our original eyes. But as Meg said, it's not easy. But let's make a challenge to ourselves today that this week we will go out and do something spectacular out of our comfort zone. Say something to someone in a gas station. Say something to the person taking your money at Starbucks or wherever you go to get your coffee. And just say, hey, how you doing today? Through a little trick today. A guy came back in to get a refill, and I told him, I said, if you can say John 3:16, I'll give it to you for free. And he fumbled. I mean, he was like, he really wanted that free coffee. He said, I know I'm supposed to see God. So, and I quoted it to him. And he, there at the end, he could quote it back to me. You know, everybody's got it. Everybody wants it. Let's just give them a piece of it. All right? Thank you.